Hello friends, this is Ganesh and video number 4 on object-oriented ABAP. In this session, I'm going to explain about constructors. So this is very simple and important concept in object-oriented. It's like constructors. In a simple way, this is a special method. So you know about methods in object-oriented. You have static, you have instance. You know how to call the method. Method has its own parameters, and you can send the information, receive the information, returning parameter. So you know about the design, how the method works. So constructor is also a method, but it's quite special. Okay, so we are going to see what are the properties of constructor, static, and what is instant constructor. And finally, we are going to see what kind of example or which scenario I'm going to use static, I'm going to use instant constructor. Okay. So let's get into the slide. So constructor is nothing but a special method with parameters. There is some things can be changed in the statement about the type of constructor, static or instance, but overall I can say constructor has a parameter. Okay, and the name is constructor or class constructor. Probably in C++ we have to use the class constructor name same as the class name. So here in ABAP we have to use the word called constructor. It refers instant constructor. If you use class underscore constructor, it refers static constructor. Even if there is a spelling mistake, then it considered as a normal method. It won't consider as a constructor. Probably in local, you have to local method, you have to write constructor, but in SE24, you have an option to select or create a constructor through a few mouse clicks. Then it automatically create a method with the name constructor and class constructor. Okay. And there are some restriction in the constructor method parameters. So normally constructor is okay to receive the values, okay, but it won't send any written parameter. It won't send anything back to the method where it is getting called. Okay, so that way it won't give any written parameter from the constructor. In very deep, instant constructor is okay to receive the values. Even static constructor is not ready to receive the value. So there is no parameter at all for static constructor. An instant constructor have importing parameters and exception, and static constructor doesn't have a parameter, doesn't have an exception as well. And it's not able to call explicitly. Even though if it is a method, you are not able to call this constructor using a class name or using an object. Okay, so it might or not might, it should trigger automatically. There are some triggering points for a constructor to call automatically. So you're not able to call the constructor explicitly through a class or object name. So this is the general idea or properties of constructor. So we are going to see two different constructors here. One is instant constructor. So instance constructor is nothing but it has only one instant constructor for a class. Let me take this. Yeah. So it has only one instant constructor. You can't create more than one, I can say constructor or instant constructor for a class. It should be only one. And when this constructor is getting called is whenever the objects are getting created. We are talking about instant constructor. Whenever the objects are getting created, then automatically it will trigger or it will call the constructor. Okay. So here more than one call is nothing but if I create multiple objects. So if I create 3 different objects for a same class, then the constructor is going to call more than means 3 times. So every object is going to trigger or call the constructor. Okay, to execute the constructor method. And it cannot be more specific than the visibility of the instance. In another simple manner, I can say you have to keep the instant constructor in a public section. Okay, meaning there is a method, it's an instant constructor, it's nothing but a method. So the constructor to be initiated whenever the object is getting created. So if you're going to access anything through an object, that particular property means a attribute or a method should be in the public area only, right? So through an object, you're not able to call a protected method, you're not able to call a private method or attribute. So that is the meaning of this statement. So you have to, they're not giving a very direct answer for this. Instant constructor should be public. Instead of that, they mention very clearly, cannot be more specific than the visibility of the instance. Instant is nothing but an object. So what is the object visibility? Only in the public section. So your instant constructor should be in the public section only. And importing parameter and exceptions are allowed. There is no exporting parameter. So instant constructor is ready to accept your values. You can create an exception as well, but you're not able to send anything outside of the computer. So sorry, outside of the constructor. So there is no export parameter allowed for instant constructor. Okay, so hope you have some clarity now. What is constructor and what is instant constructor, when it is going to call, what is do's and don'ts on it. Then so next is static constructor. So the name should be class underscore constructor. And static constructor for a class, single static constructor, both are same, like even instance also only one, static also only one. And when this constructor is getting triggered, triggering point of the static constructor is before the class is accessed for the first time. So what are the options to access the class while creating an object? Yes, it's access. While accessing a static attribute through a class name, while accessing a static method through a class name. So there are a lot of options to access the class the first time, before the first time. Okay, so creating an object, whatever it is. So whenever it's going to have that kind of triggering point, static constructor is getting called. So it won't wait for creating an object. Without creating an object, if you're going to call a static method, yes, that time also, before that time, before it going to access that, it should call the constructor. I can say the hierarchy. Okay, you can have a simple write statement to understand when this instant and static constructor are called. Keep one write statement, static constructor called, instant constructor called, create an object, create a static, call a static method. Then you can understand, okay, it should trigger the constructor first, then only it going to call the method. So you're calling a method, static method, class name, double arrow mark, and a method name, and it will call the constructor first, then only it will call the actual method which you are accessing through one class name. Okay, so that is the meaning of before the class is accessed, your static constructor is getting called. Must be in the public visibility area. This is very direct. So static constructor should be in the public. And no parameter and exceptions are allowed. So static constructor is very strict. There is no parameter or exception is going to be allowed in the static constructor. So this is the properties of instance and static constructor. Okay. Simple example is, I have an instant constructor. Okay, I have a requirement, meaning I want to get the storage location of the plant. So the idea is, from different users or different departments of the people, they want a storage location based on their plant. So whenever the department one or the user one is going to call, so particular user, I can say group one, group two, group three, different groups of users. So the group one users calls, they are working in the plant 1000. So they want the storage location only belongs to their plant. And user 2, they're going to use, the group of people use object 2, they're going to get only storage location for 1010 plant. So in that case, I'm going to create an instant constructor. So why I go with the constructor is, keep all, this is one of the example for a constructor usage. So keep all the data, or I can say master data, ready to run your show. You have a requirement. So for that, you created a class, you design a class and methods. So in that particular class or particular development, you need some master data to run or to begin the particular class, to call the methods and everything. So the master data fetch, everything is, you can keep it in the constructor. Okay, so before calling a method, it should be ready. Once you create a object, it automatically keep the data ready to flow for the different methods. So for that kind of coding, we can keep it in the constructor level. So I'm going to keep a constructor, instant constructor, because the requirement is different. So the user has to send a value at that time. Based on the value, my constructor should work. Okay, so then in that case, I go with the constructor, instant constructor. So static constructor it doesn't have any import parameter, so it's just wide open. It's nothing but it going to get or it going to get the data for the all the storage locations. So that is the idea. Suppose for the development, I want entire storage location. I want all the material types, or I want all the um, order types. So otherwise I have some TVRB variable, or I have some master table data to be loaded from a custom table, whatever it is. So I need to get everything, keep it ready before access the class. So for that I'm going with a static constructor. I'm not going to send anything, but I need some data to be ready for that. So it can be used a class or object whenever before the class first time calling, it just generated or trigger the class constructor, then the code which is inside the constructor will work. Okay, so in that scenario I'm going to choose the class constructor. Initially it is not required to have a class with constructors because it's optional. So far we have seen many classes without constructor. So constructor is an optional concept, but whenever you need these kind of informations or this some data to be ready, some validation to be done before getting my actual process of the development, then you can do the basic validations or in the constructor level. Okay, this is one of the examples. So depends on your requirement, you can get the idea, and you can keep the code whatever you want in the constructor method. Clear? So let me take you to the system. I will show you first in the local method, local class actually, how the constructor and static constructor, instant and static constructor to be created. By default, if you say constructor, it's an instant constructor. Constructor. So here it's a constructor. Executable program. Save it. So I'm going to be the local class, and I'm going to create the instance and static constructor. So class A definition and class. So as I mentioned, it should be public, your instant constructor, public section. Constructor name should be same. Okay, so methods constructor. So let me have implementation class A implementation and class. So the definition and implementation is almost same like a normal method. So you have to use the method keywords and you have to define your constructor method in method. Okay. Check it. Yeah, so there is no issue. So here I can say write instance constructor called or triggered. So I can say called because you're not able to call the constructor, it's just triggered. Okay, so let's go with startup selection. So after the processing block, you need a startup selection code. So I can say data of object 1 is equal to new class A. Okay, so I didn't call any method, I just created an object. So let me act toward it. So I'm going to execute it. So I didn't call any method, just create an object. That's fine. Let it execute. Let's see how it behaves. So it shows instant constructor triggered. So once you create an object, automatically it called or it triggered the constructor. Okay. So there is no explicit call for constructor. I'm going to have another object. So whenever there is an object creation, your instance constructor should call. Just execute. Yes, it's called. So if you create 5 different objects for a same class, that class constructor should call 5 times. If each object creation, your instance constructor should trigger or called. Okay. And let me have another method, get. Okay. Method get and method. So this method which I'm going to show you, there is no relation or connection. If you call the get method, your instant constructor should call. No. So here I'm going to call the method by object1 get check activate, then execute. So only two. Okay, so only object creation, your instant constructor to be triggered. So next I'm going to create, okay, let me do one thing. There is a spelling mistake. Let's see, just remove u. Okay, just activate it. So it won't give any syntax error, like there is a spelling mistake in the constructor. So you have to take care of it and then plus execute. So nothing comes because inside the get method I don't have anything. So let me have here write get method. Activate, then execute. So only get method is called, your constructor is not called because system not recognized that is your constructor because of the simple spelling mistake. Constructor. Okay, so now you'll get 3 write statements because 3 objects, 2 objects and 1 get statement. So 2 times your constructor going to trigger and 1 get method as well. Okay, this is simple. I'm going to have a static constructor. So the syntax would be, you know about the static method, the same way you have to use class methods, and it should be class constructor. So okay, spelling, yeah, right. And here I'm going to use method class constructor right static constructor trigger. So here spelling mistake is fine, no issues. Constructor got triggered. End method. Okay. So now this gets triggered whenever the class object is getting accessed, like before calling the one. So here I'm going to use the first statement to call the class as creating an object, right? So accessing the class, not call the class, accessing the class. So it will trigger only once. If I say execute, 2 objects are getting created. If I say execute, you can say first it start with static constructor only. Okay, so before it goes to, even if before it goes to instant constructor, it creates the it triggers the static constructor. That is the meaning of the statement. Before the actual class is getting called or accessed, your static constructor method should trigger. Okay, and here I created 2 objects, that's why it's created 2 triggered, not created, triggered 2 times the instant constructor and normal method. Okay, even if I say let me on this and let me keep, okay, one more, okay, otherwise, okay, let's create one more method, static method, static method. So there is no hierarchy, you can go ahead with constructor or normal method, static method, end method, no write statement. Okay, so now I'm going to call the static method. So no object created, so I'm going to call the static method directly using the class name, class a double arrow static method. So this is also accessing the class property. So this time also it calls, it triggers the static constructor. See, static constructor got triggered. Okay, So you should know the basic idea of what is constructor and what is the properties on it and what is the difference between static and instant constructor. So my basic understanding is just go with the right statement in the normal method, constructor, static constructor, play around with creating an object, accessing the class property. Then only you come to know what is the hierarchy, which one triggers first. Static is always triggers first. Even you have a static and instant, static is always triggers first. So that will be very easy for you. Now I'm going to show you the same in SE24 with the actual example. So plant, they're going to pass the plant and they want a storage location with the instant constructor, but they want the entire storage location without the plant. They go with static constructor. Let's open SE24. Constructor. So I'm going to create a class and it's a public class constructor. Yep. Forget about the spelling mistakes, please. Okay, so now I'm going to have a method. I'm not going to type it here. There is an option called constructor and static constructor here. Constructor, class constructor, creation. Okay, just click constructor. In a new environment, you will get a more option. Probably it won't be in the same application toolbar. If you click the more option, you will get create class constructor, create constructor. Okay, I'm going to just click constructor. You can see here. So that particular button is gone because only one constructor is allowed. So automatically it comes to the instance method. You're not able to change the level. Everything will take care by system. And you can go with parameters. So if you go to parameters of the constructor, especially instant constructor, you're able to see the parameters. You are not able to see the import export option. Okay, because constructor is by default, it accepts only import parameters. It can receive the value. It won't send anything to you, back to you. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a plant is my input parameter. That's fine. So go back. Okay, and go to method, means source code of the method, and I'm going to, okay, before that I need to create an internal table. Anyway, it won't create, it won't send anything, means send in the sense it won't give back any information. Then how we can have to handle this? I'm going to create a global class attribute and as an internal table. So once the internal table is ready, so once the internal table is filled, I'm able to call or I'm able to access the internal table throughout my class in a different methods. Okay, so that is the idea. So I need to have a class attribute. Okay, and I'm going to have an internal table over here. IT plant, okay, IT storage location details, right? strloc details. Okay, so what is the level? You can have instance or static. Let me have a static because I may have an option to call this in a static method. So we'll have the static, and the visibility is going to be private because it's not going to call outside of my class. So I'm going to keep my data private. And associated type, you can create a table type in SE11 and you can assign it over here, or you have to create inside this option. You can use a small editor will open for you, and you can create whatever you want. Just say S, this arrow button. So it's created already. Class data is nothing but IT storage location details. It's a static method, sorry, static attribute it got created. This is the ABAP editor, so you can make use of it. So what I'm going to do was types, excuse me, begin of type, excuse me, storage location details. So I want a plant type works underscore D and storage location type LGORT underscore D. Okay, I'm not going to add much details here, so simple. This is modify based on your need, type, storage location. Okay, so then I'm going to create a table type over here. It's like type IT, sorry, I'm going to create a table type TT type table of type str storage location. Okay, so here I'm going to say class data type table of sorry this is one type tt storage location. So this is a way you can modify over here, or you can do it in SE11 table type and you can use it. So anything is fine, depends on your requirement or need, you can do it. Just go back and you're able to see so here associated type is tt strloc is coming over here. Okay, so let me activate the class, entire class initially. Okay, activated. Now go to my method. So I'm going to fill this internal table. Let me get into the constructor. Okay, select new syntax, select from T001L. It has plant and storage location. The fields are required as works and LGORT. And now what is the where condition? Where works equal to. So whoever is going to call or trigger and create an object, they have to pass a plant because it's mandatory option over here. I didn't make as optional. And into table at IT storage location detail. So this is a global, or I can say class attribute. So I can use it anywhere in the sense a constructor or normal method, static method, anywhere in the entire class implementation. So it's a kind of a global variable. Okay. Okay, there is one more escape character is missing for the where condition. Yes. At symbol is escape character. Probably you might aware of it nowadays. Okay. Now, so I need some method to display the values. So we'll see. Get storage location details. Okay, this is going to be an instance method or static. It depends on you. Public. Okay. So get storage location details, just loop it and display it. So loop IT storage location details. Oh, what happened? Okay, storage location details. Into data WA storage location details. So it has only two values. So I can say write. So first is plant. So I'll go with storage location details. Plant. And storage location details. Storage location. Okay, activate it. Just to display the values, I created a method. That's it. So it's not required you have to follow the same. So once you understand the concept, you just play around. Okay, that's it. Let me execute this in AC24 itself. Just execute. So constructor has a parameter called plant. So you have to give it. Okay. So here once execute, you'll come to know there is an option to create, but before create, you have to give the value for constructor because import parameter is iPlant. So I'm getting 1000. Imagine I'm going to create an object with the value of 1000 and just click create instance. Then you're going to display this because in constructor there is no write statement, there is no export parameter, so we're not able to see the output. So for that we have another normal method. If I execute the method, that internal table got filled with the values because of the constructor is already triggered while creating an object for an instant constructor. So this is a plant. And these are storage locations. I have already opened the table as well for easy reference. So 1000 has only two storage locations. So here it is, only 1 and 2. So if I go with 1710, it has more storage location. So let's go back and imagine I'm going to create another object with by passing the value 1710. Execute. So here 1710 and create an instance. So now the constructor called, the internal table is get values, and if I execute this, you'll get a different value. So instant constructor works only for the object. Okay, so it depends on the requirement. You can decide whether you go with the instance or static. So now I'm going to have a static constructor. So that is wide open. Let me have a static constructor here. Just click class constructor. It automatically comes as a first because probably it comes triggered at the first moment. So just click parameters. So it shows over here, I think you're able to see class constructor and destructor do not have parameters and exceptions. So you're not able to give any parameters for the class constructor, static constructor. So go to source code. Let me go to instant constructor and copy the code. I'm going to use the same code instead of without where condition. Let me copy this from the instant constructor, go back, go to class constructor, double click or click the source code option over here. And here keep the same code. One difference is without where condition. So I don't want a where condition over here. I can't give as well because there is no import parameter. Act toward it. I made this internal table as a static attribute because static method can call only static attributes. So now we'll check. Go back and I'm going to execute this. Okay, but the issue was it's going to call the static and then constructor, instant constructor. So there may be a chance of overwriting the same internal table. Okay, let me do one thing. Just for the testing purpose. So if storage location is initial, then only I want this to be triggered. Okay. So just make sure, otherwise what happens, it just triggered, but you're not able to see how it's triggered. Okay, I'll do one thing. I'll have a breakpoint in both constructor and static constructor. Have a breakpoint in the instance. Anyway, instance is going to call because I'm going to create an instance. I don't have any other method to call. So that is the reason I go with class constructor, have a breakpoint over here as well. Okay, go back. Then execute. Okay, so here the plant is 1000. I'm going to create an instance. Is getting into the static constructor first. So here class constructor, and it's going to be triggered with wide open call. So fi so it gets 268 records, and I'm going to click again fi, and or I can just give f8 because I have a breakpoint in the instant constructor. I don't have a breakpoint. 1 second. Okay, just execute this. It'll execute all the, means it just get everything from the particular table. Okay, this is a static constructor. There is no where condition. Let me figure out instant constructor. Do I keep the breakpoint inside the if condition? Yes, that is the reason. Keep it in the if condition. Go back, execute, and give a value over here 1000. Create an instance. It should create static and then it should call, not create, it should trigger the static and then instance as well. So this is class constructor, static constructor. Execute. full execution, and it calls the instant constructor as well. So here I have a checkpoint, that's why it's not coming inside the select state, inside the if condition. So this is the hierarchy. It should call the static first, then instance constructor. Okay, so hope it's might easy for you to understand. And one quick concept I just explained, and then we'll close this video. How to call the same from a program. Okay, it's instant and static constructor. So here you can create a program. Executable, save it, local. So here I'm going to create object for a class ZJI cons, ZJI CONS. Okay, oh god, one second. ZJI cons. Okay, so here constructor has an import parameter. Okay, so when you are calling or when you are triggering the constructor for instant constructor, you're going to create an object, you're triggering an instant constructor. So at the time of creating an object, you have to pass a value for the constructor method, constructor import parameters. Okay, because only that is a place where your instant constructors are getting triggered. So control spacebar. So it's getting slow. So here it is, im underscore plant. Okay. So here is I have to say equal to 1000. So this is a way you are passing the value to the constructor method while calling an object. The same thing you have to call. So after this, I'm going to call the method to display the values. Okay, I didn't close the statement. Get storage location. Okay. So next I'm going to call the same. I'm going to create another object with a different value for the constructor method. So that is going to be 0001. Okay. So let's see. Right. Skip. Add to it. I'm sorry. Skip to. Okay. Execute. Oh, yeah, I have a breakpoint. Okay. It should stop the static constructor, then it should come to the instant constructor. Okay, I think it won't execute correctly because I have a if condition in the instant constructor. Let me take this out. Yeah, it actually static constructor data. I don't want that. Class change constructor. So I don't want the if condition. So this is for an example. Okay, so you don't want to blindly follow this. So I want to make sure it's called only the instant constructor as well. Means the data is coming from the instant constructor, not calling, because that is not in our control. It just call whenever the access, whenever the triggering point generates. So now it's going to static, fill it, and it comes to instance and it overwrite it. So F8, again it goes to debugging mode. Okay, go to static first. Yeah, it's filled with the values fi 268. I'm not sure the same breakpoint is available in the instance one. Let's see. Yep. Yes. And again, I'm going to execute this. So now it's overwrite the 268 with 2. Okay. Because same internal table I'm using. So just execute. Take the breakpoint out. So this is for the object 1 with 1000. This is for object 2 with 0001. Okay, so this is a way you have to call your instant constructor from the program, and the value you have to pass it. Clear? So static constructor doesn't have any import parameter, so you don't worry about how to pass a value. You can have more than one parameter also. So control spacebar will take care of it. So if you have more than one parameter, you can using import option, importing word and no separated by comma, just a space is enough. The same way you can pass the multiple values to the constructor as well. So you will get an idea about what is constructor and what is static and what is instance, and you'll get an example also when you go with static and when you go with the instant constructor. So we'll learn more about the constructor when you come with a concept called inheritance. So before going to inheritance, make sure you are good in the constructor. Then it's very easy to understand when the constructor is going to call, means when the superclass constructor call, when the subclass constructor call, how the instant and static differs in the inheritance, superclass and subclass. A lot of things, a lot of interesting things are waiting for you. Play around with this, and if you have any queries, please let me know. Thank you so much for your time. See you in the next video.